What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rise Above podcast. I'm Caleb,
I'm Tyler.
I'm JD.
and we are back on with episode 3 on how to deal with grief. Last episode, we had Sammy Davidson come on, and he talked about just the loss of Alyssa, his girlfriend, and he just broke that down for us, and honestly did a great job. I think we can all agree that he did a fantastic job. And we have another guest on here that we're going to introduce here shortly, but episode 3, how to deal with grief. We have some important dates coming up. On March 2nd, we have the Mental Health Night at Memphis Christian Church. We might be having a booth over there, and they're going to have some professional speakers, a mental health counselor, and some social workers. And if you guys want to show up and just support, the cost is $5 per person. It includes dinner for each attendee, and it's also $10 per family. So you guys can register on memphiscc.info. And that's going to be a good night, I think, just for the community to come together and support that.
Yeah, no, that definitely is a good thing they're doing. But before that, on the 12th of February, we're going to be doing the Mental Health Awareness Night for basketball, which is also our senior night. So we'll be having a donation box set up for the Pete Foundation, which is the foundation we'll be donating our proceeds to. And, yeah, we're also going to be selling our merch that night, too. So if Jay's going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to have our merch. We're going to have 300 shirts. So
288, right?
300 now.
The logo is fire.
The logo is pretty nice. My dad, Matt Michael, designed those.
Yeah, huge shout out to Matt.
Yeah. And, yeah, so those are going to be $15 to $20. We haven't figured out yet, I don't think.
I don't know about $20.
15 probably. Yeah, so we hope everybody gets some of those. All the proceeds of that is going to the Pete Foundation as well. So hopefully we can get a lot of money for that.
Yeah, but we're excited, and we're looking forward to those 2 nights especially. But other than that, without any further ado, we have a very special guest, Henryville Elementary School Principal, Mr. Sean Pennington.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Well, we talked to you a little bit just before the podcast, just kind of get to know him, and so far, he's a lot better than what we thought before. We thought it was going to be a little bit awkward, but
Especially with an adult. But, yeah, no, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, he's
School's over, guys. Principal hats off. We're good.
Well, okay, just let the listeners know a little bit about you and who you are.
Sure. Like I said, we'll just go with Sean.
All right.
Keep it informal. So I've been the principal here for about 6 months, since July. Originally born and raised in Madison, right down the road. Just been cool to be in. It's a really tight-knit community, so just thankful to be here. Just learning every day the ins and outs of what it means to be, what would you call it, Henryvillian? I don't know what you...
Yeah.
I like
Is that what
hornet.
you-
I like that.
Is that what
Oh,
you...
no,
Yeah.
not a hornet.
Just a hornet? I mean, hey, the biggest thing is we got to get people to realize it's not a bee.
It's definitely
It's a
not
hornet.
a bee. That's
maybe
the most
not
frustrating.
on y'all's side, but on mine, there's lots of bees. We're not bees.
I remember when I was elementary and someone said, "You guys have a bumblebee as a mascot." I was like, "No, we do not."
Hey, there's some people. I mean, there's bees everywhere, but we're not the bees.
No.
Just cool to, like I said, still learning the ropes of ins and outs of the community, but cool to be in a space of seeing the big kids and little kids every day. Small town kid from Madison. I think Mr. Bud calls me a river rat since we're on the river. But pretty much just cool to talk to you guys, and let's do it.
All right.
So, when you were growing up, you grew up in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said you were a 5th grade and 6th grade teacher there, or 4th and 5th.
Yeah, I spent after I got mom's teacher, choir director at Madison, so kind of come from, and lots of aunts and uncles that are all in education, so I just felt kind of family business, I guess, so to speak. So that's what I went into. I was 4th, 5th grade teacher in Indianapolis for about 10 years. Went back to grad school a couple times, trying to figure life out. Worked at Indiana Department of Ed, hopped to Ivy Tech for a little bit, managed a ton of academic programs for their campuses for all 19 of those, but wanted to get back to Southern Indiana where I can walk down the street and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Nobody wants to scream at me for saying hi. Not that happens in Indy, but so I was in Indianapolis for a while, and my family's from down around this area, and just thankful for the opportunity to be here. So been away from family for a long time, so it's nice to be able to be near them and in a community that I can say y'all and start having my twang again, and nobody gives me a hard time.
Did you ever have thoughts before while you were teaching, like that you would be a principal?
I really didn't. I think it's probably one of those things, you guys will find out, and in life you get into a situation where it's like you're a teacher, and it's like, I'm not too terrible at this. I haven't ruined anybody's life yet. So then you get into, I want to make a bigger impact. How do I do that? You want to get into administration, but I'm pretty young for a principal, which has been kind of a blessing and a curse. I really don't tell people how old I am because a lot of people just ask. They don't really want to know how old I am. It's one of those deals of, how old is this guy? He doesn't know what he's doing, which may be true. That's their opinion, but just trying to get into administration. So, try to get different jobs of trying to get into school leadership just to try to help more people. I mean, I've never had an aspiration to be the boss or anything like that. It's just how to help more people and help more kids. And there's aspects of it that I'm like, hey, that's cool. And then there's lots of aspects that either I didn't see coming or kind of just hardships that you have to deal with from a leadership perspective of there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being responsible for so many people, whether it's adults or kids. And it's kind of a hard balance sometimes to, you got to keep your people happy and healthy that you're responsible for, but can't sacrifice yourself at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's a hard balance sometimes, but nope, don't know that I ever really aspired to be a principal. I've been encouraged by different people to do it. If I told you I thought I would be sitting here right now, and no, I think even when I applied over the summer, I think I just even walked out of the interview like that was a good experience and didn't expect anything to come of it. And started January 26th, and school started a week later. It's very much deer in the headlights.
Right.
I think that lasted till about December.
So, what has been the hardest thing that you've noticed from being a teacher to now a principal?
From teacher to principal, I think, in the classroom, you're just responsible for the well-being of your kids. You got to teach your content. It's real easy to build relationships with kids, for me personally. And I think, at least in this situation, there's been so many different principals, either on the high school side or recently on the elementary side, that when you get into a tight-knit community, it's really hard for people to trust.
Right, yeah.
So I don't know how many conversations, I'm not going to compare my experience to anybody else's, but, one of the most difficult things here is there's been so much turnover on both sides of the building that it's a, community where you want to trust people. And I think that's the most difficult part, either, with community members or adults or whatever you want, that have to trust that you're here for the right reasons, or that the decisions that you're going to make are with the best interest of them in mind. So just trying to build people's trust, but there's no quick fix to that. It just takes time.
Right, especially even with COVID, I'm sure it's been difficult.
Yeah, especially with COVID, trying to deal with, I think at one time we had like a third of the school out was on quarantine, and teachers, like Dr. Seuss in it, teaching in a box, teaching in a wherever. High school side too, so that's been a difficult part of it, but there's no answer to. I think I said that first couple weeks. I was like, if any of y'all have a book for how to teach in a pandemic, I'd go write it, and you can retire tomorrow because nobody knows. But that's a big one. Trying to get through the pandemic, we just throw out one of those cliche sports answers, like just take it day by day, but that's literally all we can do. But at least here, that's been the hardest part, is trying to earn people's trust, but there's no, I mean, we're month 6 or 7 of it, and I'm an outsider, and I'll be honest, that's kind of hard with the community of being an outsider. It's a blessing and a curse because I don't know any of the backstories of things. I don't know how things were. But everyone definitely wants to give their 2 cents and opinions of here's how it was, here's how it needs to be, and this is kind of blunt, but most of the time I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
I don't know them. I'm not from here. I don't have a dog in that fight. Just trying to do what's best for the 650 kids that I got here, and try to support my people and y'all's people over there. Miss Sang, Mr. Lewis, good people.
Right.
Yeah.
We love Miss Sang and Mr. Lewis most definitely.
Shout out Mr. Lewis, Miss Sang.
Yes. Shout out. So we know that you have a story over mental health and you have a story over grief.
Absolutely.
So that's something that's definitely, we found out from Miss Orberson, Tyler's mom, that she gave us a little background of your story, and it kind of just, I don't know, it kind of just, I guess, surprised us a little bit than from what we've heard. And you mind sharing that just from the start?
Sure. Story don't share often, not because it's hard, it's just because you don't want to talk about things for people to turn it into like martyrdom or repeat behaviors, anything like that. Grew up, like I shared with you guys, parents divorced, pretty young, but then just kind of went through adults, kids. We all have learning pains, and my dad and I have repaired our relationship since then, but middle school, high school, just had, dad kind of pieced out for a while. So we did the single mom thing. And my grandpa stepped in. He was my step-grandfather, actually. So he didn't have to be who he was for me. But he was, best friend, hero. So he kind of filled that fatherly void for me. So I hear a lot, they're like, you're an old soul. I'm like, well, it's because I was raised by a dude from a different generation. Mm-hmm. People call people sir or ma'am when people get annoyed. They're like, I'm not a sir, I'm not a ma'am. I'm like, I don't mean it disrespectfully. It's how I was taught to speak to people. So that was, the whole time I was in high school, I played baseball. I'd say soccer is like what I actually like.
We love soccer.
I love soccer. I played hoops. Soccer was my thing. I think my family gets annoyed with how much Premier League soccer I watch. Like Tottenham's Harry Kane, if you're listening.
Right.
Send me some ticks, man. Love me some Harry Kane. But soccer was definitely what I love watching or playing. But baseball was Papaw's thing. But he was legally blind, so he could like make out rough shapes of things. But kind of he and I's thing together was we'd watch IU basketball and Reds baseball. And we did that for the whole time I was in high school. If there was an IU game on or a Reds game on, we'd sit and watch, and I'd tell him what the score was or how many outs, strikes, things like that. But what's crazy with like baseball, he could tell if a ball was hit, he could tell like what part of the field it was hit to. He could tell how deep it was. He could tell just based off of the sound. Or like if I would walk into a room versus my brother walking into a room, he could tell who was walking in based on the sound of their footsteps.
Wow.
Or he could tell by, like if somebody was outside, a car door would shut, all sounds the same to us. And he'd be like, so-and-so's here, so-and-so's here. And then sure enough, like, they walked through the door. So I did the baseball thing, because he couldn't play, but he loved it. Went collegiately, and, I just talked to him hours upon hours a day. He was just my dude. Like I said, he was my step-grandpa. The whole time I was growing up, he was Papaw. He was my mom's stepdad, but he kind of stepped in and filled that void. So that's what, with kind of my experience in trauma and grief is, you don't have to be family to somebody to save them or be there for them. High school, like I got into some dumb stuff like high school kids do. And he, without him, I have no problem saying I'd be in jail. I have no idea. I doubt I wouldn't be sitting here right now, without him. But it was of just wanting to make him proud. And that's what I still do every day. That's what still, even you lose people, like you can still watch IU. Like I went to IU Purdue game last, like boiler down. Sorry. Rob.
I hate him.
Big
Barber.
shot, Rob. Just stuff like that, like being there, and my brother was there, and just texting about like how Papaw would have loved it, just stuff like that. But like I said, he was important figure in my life. He had some health problems, so I wasn't too much older than you guys. Like I said, I was 20. Let's be 8 years, yeah. So I was 23, 24. Got a phone call from my mom, and I just remember her saying, "Where are you?" But the tone of her voice was, I was like, something's up. And I honestly thought the dog died. That's what I thought. I was like, we had a Yorkie, Sebastian. He was my childhood dog. I was like, the dog got hit by a car. The dog's dead. Is legit what I thought. And she just keeps saying, "Where are you?" And then my girlfriend at the time, she came in and just tears rolling down her face. And then Mom told me, I'm not going to get into the details of exactly what he did, but short version is Papaw died by suicide, and it said that, and even 8 years ago, but I can remember the conversation. I can remember the sounds that I made. I got up. I think I put 5-10 holes in a wall, and those are just things that you're not. It'll be 8 years in June, but I can recall all of that like it was yesterday. And then the fallout, the grief from that, just as my experience or the experience with this community on both sides of people having died by suicide the same way, it's just something I don't wish on anybody, but it shouldn't be a way out ever. And if anybody gets to the point that they think that's the last resort because things will be better if that's the choice that they choose to make, then it's just not. Right.
So your first reaction was just pure anger.
Rage was the most, I said, didn't know what to do. Because like I said, at that point, I felt like my own father wasn't involved in my life at that point, but I mean, Papa was my rock. Like he was my paternal figure. Like he held the whole family together. And that's the things that people don't think about if they're thinking about doing those things. Like entire family dynamics change, like holidays, all of these things that people don't consider the domino effect of the actions that they're going to take. But rage, anger, just like I punched and punched and punched until, don't do that, guys. Paying for apartment stuff's expensive. So don't, especially blinds and holes in walls. They'll ring you up a bill. But yep, just kind of did that until, like I said, the girl I was dating at the time, she was at the hospital she was working at, and she came and kind of grabbed me. But I mean, by that point, I looked down, like both my hands covered in blood. There's just, but it was one of those, like, you didn't feel it. Yeah. It was just, it had to express. I'm a pretty quiet guy, but just like the screaming and the yelling and just an emotion. And I don't even know if I have a word to describe. I would say rage would be about as close as I could get. Right. Just an uncontrollable, just anger, rage. Because it wasn't the sadness, the depression, all that happens later. But you're just in shock in that moment. And it takes you a while to even come to grips that, I mean, it's months after that I'd go into, like, Nanny had to move out of the house because it was just, just those memories. They'd been there for 20 years. But it was even like, and I'm sure all families experience this, but it's even like, going into the house and I'm like, he's going to be sitting right here. This is where he always sat. I know. And there'd be times, even the year after, I still walk in the house and I'm like, he's going to be sitting right there, or he's upstairs doing something. I know he's upstairs. It's been a year, but he's upstairs and he'll be down here in a minute. And those are just the things that you never get over it. It's just part of new normal. But if any of you three young lads have a definition of what normal is, you let me know, because I still don't know.
I don't think we even know, especially with everything going on lately. But so you said that your first initial reaction was rage.
Oh yeah.
But once, say maybe a few days after, what were the emotions then?
I'd say the emotions after that for a while, and it's been 8 years, and I still fight them daily. Just a sadness, just an emptiness. I mean, it was almost every day for 6 months. I was teaching at that time, and I would get to the same stoplight, and for whatever reason, I would hit the red every time. And I would hit that same stoplight. I'd get right before school, and it was just every day for 6 months that I would just replay the whole thing in my head. And I'm not an overly emotional guy. When I get really mad, I cry. But, I mean, it was just I would hit that light, think about it, and just bawl my eyes out. And I just replayed that for months and months and months. And I actually shared this with our whole, staff. Not in this detail, but, I mean, I'd like pretty happy-go-lucky guy at that point. Just completely changed me. Like nothing was funny. Nothing was. I've talked to, kind of have a mentor here at Christian Lake, like Ross Connect. I don't know if you guys know Mr. He's a great dude.
Great guy.
He's a great dude. He and I have sat and I've shared some of the detail with him, but I was just like after that, Ross, I was like I just turned into a monster for 2 years, just mad at the world. And he's like, you weren't a monster, you were broken. That's first time it had been described to me like that. But the emotions after are just shock to start out with. Like it's not real, you don't understand it. Then when you move through the stages of grief, I mean, we can sit here and look at it like you can Google, hey, stages of grief. It's different for everybody. Like some people have to have pictures around. Some people have to have, or some families, like they don't want pictures around. They don't want. So I've got a few things in my office that are like little things that remind me of him. But you go through these stages of, first you're just in shock for a while, like this isn't real. Even through the whole funeral stuff, I'm like just like out of body experience. This ain't happening. Then after that, you go through. At least for me, I just shut everything off. Like it ruined, the romantic relationship that I was in at that point, like ruined that. Occupationally, I was a garbage teacher that year. I just didn't care. Not that I didn't, like you just want to shut off all emotion. So you just stop caring about anything, really. It's just this emptiness. And then that's when you go through these different of either being mad at the person, and then you play the blame game. What did I do? How did I not see? Because aside from my grandmother, I was the last person to see him aside from her. We watched the Reds game that night. They played the Giants. Homer Bailey threw a 2-hit shutout. They were playing in San Francisco. I didn't tell him I love you that haunts me every day. I didn't say I love you when I left. I said, see you later. And I always said I love you. And then got the phone call like less than 12 hours later, which was June 30th. My brother's birthday is July 1st. So that's also kind of like a hard thing for my brother, like because we don't know if it was June 30th or July 1st. Nobody really knows, the time, and it's not really a conversation one to have with like the medical people. It's like, can you give us an exact time of when this, so kind of picked a date, June 30th. Didn't want to do that to Seth, my brother, if that's like the correlation or the connection he has. But, after that, that's when, like I said, I'd say anger, shock, and then you just go into stages of depression. And, for people in this community who've been through it, then you start playing the blame game. And for me, I took all of the blame internally. I started going to therapy just because people are like, you need help, which I'm thankful they did. When people choose to take that action, there's no stopping them once they get there. Doesn't matter what you do. If there are certain actions that they go through, you're not stopping them once they get there. But for me, I took it as I had been abandoned by one person. This person stepped in as my dude. He was, my whole world, and then felt like abandoned from him after. So it was like I felt like I'd had both dads, like, peace out. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll say as an adult, that's still, like, I have abandonment issues because, like, I get close to people and I'm like, you're gonna give me the deuces at some point.
Right.
So those are things that, still struggle with after the fact. But then it's just years of after that. I don't know where people handle it in different ways, but from the grief perspective, like the depression, the anger, the sadness, it's just always kind of there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that it ever goes away. It's just something you deal with. That is just kind of a permanent.
So how do you cope with it, or how did you really cope with it?
I would say, for years of, like I said, it took, therapy for me personally, of just talking about it. I think that's another reason, like, I poured into grad school. Like, I went to grad school back to back, worked all the time. So for me, like, I poured myself into an occupation. I was coaching, so I was teaching full time, going to school full time, and coaching full time. So it was literally, I would wake up, I'd go to school, teach all day. I was coaching varsity baseball at the time, so I would go coach baseball, and I would stay there till like 8 or 9 o'clock. So literally the only thing I had to do was go home, go to bed. Or the days that I earned on the weekends, I'd have class. So I'd be at Butler on Wednesdays or UND Saturday. So for me, the way that I coped with it was I went to school, I coached, so I had like 3 full-time jobs at one time just because I didn't want to I couldn't just sit and ruminate on things. Which I think people use different things to try to alleviate their grief. If some people want to use substances or different behaviors to try to help themselves. I had a really hard time after that of just letting people get close to me. I think I still have a hard time with that because I just assume everybody's going to leave, if I'm just being honest about it. So I have a real hard time with that or getting connected with people. Kind of quiet by nature, but I know that I can rub people as being arrogant or whatever, and that's not the case. It's just, it's difficult for me to try to get close to people. So I think that's part of it. You feel abandonment, you feel anger. The grief is something that, you guys were talking about your buys and tries stuff. It's like going to the gym. Dealing with grief is, I would say, like going to the gym. Like, you have to have upkeep on it. It's not something. For me, it's like you can call it whatever you want. Like, whatever people can call it, demons or dragons or whatever you're fighting down deep inside of you. For me, it's, I still participate in, therapy, counseling, just because I know it's what keeps me healthy. Like, I can't take all the crazy stuff that happens here at school and I can let it out on somebody.
Right.
But it's like going to the gym. you know. So I think that was the biggest thing. The biggest thing for me, and I know it's cliche to say, is like realizing I had a problem. You know, because like you go through the anger, and then when you get into the depression, like you get into this deep hole of I didn't want to go out, I didn't want to get out of bed, I didn't want to go to work, I didn't want to do anything. You know, and thankfully the person I was in a relationship at that point, like she would literally every morning, Sean, get up, take a shower, put clothes on, go to work. And ultimately that ended us. But, you know, without having her in my life at that point, I mean, I'd lost my job, because I just didn't care. Did not care. So that was for me personally, you know, just that grief aspect of just kind of felt like all is lost. What's the point? And like I said, you just get used to this new normal. So, you know, if people want to say that that's a way out, the hole that you leave behind. So like I said, for, you know, like going to like Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of these things, like the family dynamics completely broken. So if you like trying to adjust to those things of you get ticked off because like Uncle so-and-so, don't sit in that chair. That's not your chair. Don't sit there. Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, of like, so dealing with it, it's like I said, it'll be 8 years in June. And, you know, I think anytime you experience loss and it's a deep loss, it's never something you get over, and you just have to kind of maintain it. So, you know, either physical activity or, which I used to do before I had this job. Don't have time. I used to do that. But, you know, like physical activity, eating healthily. But, I mean, the big one for me is, like, I still participate now in some trauma-related therapy that, you know, you can talk through things with someone who is a professional that knows how to get through those things. But, you know, there are just certain things that triggers that I have that I have to be cognizant of things that are going to set me off or, so I'd say dealing with grief, you have to find a way, I don't want to say release it, but kind of a place to focus. And like I said, some people turn to substances. My addiction at that point was, like I said, it was work for 8 hours and either coach for 4 or 5 hours, go home, sleep. Or it was school, class. And then I lived life like that for, I think, like 6 years after that. It's only been in the last couple of years that I wasn't in school or I wasn't coaching. So for me, that's how I handled it. I did whatever to keep me busy. And now it's like I'm this young dude with whatever, like, pieces of paper, which doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
I was trying to not feel and not think. Some people turn to substances, some people can turn to the gym, some people can turn to whatever. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer as to why people make the choices that they make. But for me, I just went to school and coached for a long time.
Right. So, I was kind of reading up on this maybe a few days ago, maybe a week ago or so, and just talking about just parents dealing with, you know, their child committed suicide. And one of the parents said in the article that they had the thought that, like, oh, my child, they were so selfish to do such a thing like this, because it, you know, there's so much trauma, and it's kind of like a domino effect that happens. And did you ever think that? Like, did you think that, you know, this is just something that's selfish? Or
I can see where people think that. I think it depends on the situation. Like for me, my grandpa he'd been in the hospital, U of L hospital, and he was having some issues. And he'd had a surgery, and basically he'd become diabetic, so he's going to have to give himself insulin shots, you know, in his stomach. Like watched the doctors give him a few of those, and like the look on his face, I was like, that sucks. He's going to have to change his diet. He couldn't exercise. He couldn't do, and he was going to have to be on a crazy amount of medication. And he already felt like I said, he was legally blind, but he never complained about it ever. So that's why if somebody, comes up to me like, Sean, I got this email. Sean, the Wi-Fi is not working. The printer's out of ink. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
First world problem.
That's why. Hey, that's you guys can see that. That's what I call it, first world problems. Like the printer's out of ink. The copier is jammed. How can I? I'm like, okay. But for me, with Papaw's situation, a few people said that like he was just real selfish, and I wanted to punch him straight in the face because like you have no idea. Because in my mind, he didn't want to be. He already felt like he was a burden in terms of like people had to do things for him. Like he couldn't see, he couldn't. So I mean, it depends on the situation. Do I think if someone is, somebody goes out and they rack up like tons and tons of debt and like that's their way out, I could see somebody being like, that's a selfish way out. Like you made bad choices and now you just want to run from it. So I've never felt that way, but I mean, I don't have the same experience that some people right. do. For me, it was he sacrificed himself for his family. Are there times that I'm mad at him? Why did you do that? Absolutely. Times that my family were like so ticked off at Papaw because he made this choice when he didn't know like how much we all loved him and this, that, the other. Absolutely. But I've never used that for my personal situation, but I think it just depends on person to person. But when that happened, like I said, had some family members that were like, how selfish. And I was like, I want to punch you in the face.
Right, yeah. So, did you ever, do you think that maybe this brought your family closer in a way?
Not really. It was kind of, maybe for some families it could do that. For, just seeing what it did to my grandma, like how much it aged her. Maybe for some families it would bring them closer together, but I mean, Nanny Papaw were like the glue that held us all together. And then, just for us, it was like that paternal figure was gone. So now it's just like for my family, I mean, it didn't, he was the thing, he and Nanny were like the thing that held us all together. And then he wasn't gone. So that's like another thing of, at least for my family, not that it fell apart, but it just wasn't the same.
There's just a void there.
Just
constantly.
a void that I'm sure, and there's still a void. There's still a hole, every day it's always there. There's just a feeling like, like try to tell people, like I laughed a lot more. I smiled a lot more than before. Like now people can laugh and I'm like, haha. Sometimes, not that I'm, but it just completely changes you in your outlook on life. So I even know parents in the community that, that's probably they feel, hurt or pain and pointing fingers at people. But that's why I try to tell, from my knowledge, it's like once people get to that point, you're not stopping them. And there could be a litany of reasons why people decide to make that choice. But, for any of your listeners right now that, like, hey, I'm thinking about going down this road, don't do it. Because it's not just your life. Like, you're impacting generations. You're impacting so many other people. And just that feeling of, I'll be vulnerable with y'all. I mean, there's times that, like, I'll think about him or, like, something, and I don't do it in public, but, like, if I'm by myself and I can just sit and then, like, and the tears will just come. Because it's, like, just those emotions you never get over. Like, my grandma can't have pictures of him in the house. Or it's like, I have little, like, he's in the military, so I have his American flag, and, like, that's my most prized possession in the world. This isn't like people could take anything they want away from me, and as long as I have that, like, I could care less. Like, you want my truck, you want what, like, take it, leave me the flag. That's all I want.
Right.
Or just other personal items, but, you know, I think the best thing you can do after you lose somebody is either find a way to honor that person, or, you know, like for him, he had certain expectations of me and my life, whether it was work related or the way that I treated people, or, and, you know, I don't always do a good job of it. He was a pretty brutally honest person. And I think me as a person, that's probably my best quality, is I just kind of tell it how it is. It gets me in trouble sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually gets me in trouble a lot of times. But, you know, how do I look in this dress? Don't answer that. Be careful at prom, boys.
Try.
Yeah, but, you know, just the, like, his biggest thing to me was, like, basically, like, your honesty is something nothing people can take from you. So if people ask me a question, I answer it, for better, for worse. Or if I have a belief, I stick up for that belief no matter what it is, because that's just how that's how he raised me to be. I said I'm a big IU fan, I'm a big Reds fan, and it's just like my brother and I, you know, got kind of like, we were both at the IU game. You know, I had a girl I was dating there, he had my sister-in-law there, and, you know, just like after, we're texting each other back and forth, and I'm getting teary even, like, just thinking how happy he would be that IU beat Purdue for the first time in, you know, 50 years, whatever it's been.
Wow.
It's been a decent.
It's been a hot minute.
What, 9 years?
So I'm sure it's the same
Something
thing
like
with
that.
parent. You know, if parents lose a child or you lose a family member, they're just things that'll come back. I don't even know if I can think of a good analogy, but it's just like something, I don't know, it's like a weed. You know, it's just going to keep coming back. And just when the weed comes back, you got to, you know, do your best to get rid of it. But it's more so just managing it, of, you know, these are the emotions, these are the things that, you know, so I know, like, the whole month of, you know, about the whole month of June, like every year, not going to be good, because I, you know, and then I can go, or some people handle things differently. Like, he's buried in a, I can't think of the name of it, but it's like for veterans. He's buried
Okay.
there, and like some people, you know, they want to go and like decorate the graves and like all that stuff. I go, I cry. I don't want to be there.
Right.
You know, I feel guilty sometimes that I'm like, I haven't been over there in 6 months. But like anytime, like Veterans Day, we went and put her wreaths around America. It's like Christmas time. You go put wreaths on their graves, whatever. And the whole time I'm like trying to fight tears. My family's like trying to talk to me. I'm like, stop talking to me. Like, what's your deal? I'm like, just keep talking. It's gonna happen. Shut up. I didn't say that. Kids listening, don't say shut up. Mr. P said don't say that.
All right, just to circle back, you said something about your friends pushing you to get help.
Yep.
And that was therapy for you.
Yep.
How did they do that? And what way would you recommend for us to do that to somebody that we think needs help?
Yeah, I think it's just a brutally honest conversation. My assistant principal at that time, he had lost his brother in a similar manner that I did. And it was multiple times that year that I got called into my boss's office, and he was like, "You don't care, do you?" I said, "Sure don't." And I didn't. I didn't care about anything. He could have been like, "You're fired." I'd be like, "Cool, bro. See you later. I'm going to spend a whole lot more time sleeping, playing, I think, Call of Duty at that point. I don't know. Do you guys still play if you had your COD days or whatever?
Yeah.
I do.
Just a campaign, though. I'm not good enough for the online stuff. But anyway, neither here nor there. He just said, you know, like, he told me that I had changed. Like, where was the old me? And I was just like, I don't know, man. He's not here. And probably right now, I'm probably as close to my old self as I've ever been. But I'll never be who I was beforehand. But, you know, like I think we talked about before we started recording, just the stigma around people going to wanting help. And it's still been that way for me sometimes. It's like I'll go through the therapy, or if there's anything that I need of like, if there's stuff medication wise, I'm not ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's like if I have a headache, I'm going to take some Tylenol. If I've, got an issue, like I was a catcher in college, so I've got the knees of like an 80-year-old man. If my knees are flaring up, like I take some Aleve.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain is still an organ, so you have to take care of it, whatever it is. And quite honestly, I'll go through like these 6-month spells where like I'm in it and I'm like healthy and I'm like, good, we're done here.
Yeah.
And then I quit everything and I go straight back to where I was. And then I got to spend 6 months getting. So that's the biggest thing is, like I said, it's like maintenance at the gym. But if you quit, and you guys are gym guys, like it's way easier to lose what you've built. And it takes you months to build, like if you're getting to, finally you've hit whatever, if you're trying to hit 225, whatever number of times on the bench, like you're going to spend 6 months trying to get there. But then you can stop going to the gym for like 2 weeks and
Screwed.
And you've just dropped, however many pounds. It's at least my experience. Same thing with mental health. Like if I stop taking care of my mental health because I think like, I don't need it anymore. We're good. Like I'm in a good spot. And then it's that same thing. So, for me, I think the biggest thing is the stigma. Like you're weak, people can think about you some certain kind of way. If people want to think anything about me for like the fact that I'm like, hey, I do this, I do that, whatever, I could care less.
Mm-hmm.
If people want to judge me because I know it's what I do to be the healthiest version of myself. I would say, if you're at school, find an adult, find somebody to talk to. If you have somebody that is struggling, the biggest way that you can save somebody, or the biggest way that somebody can be saved, is through a relationship that you have with somebody. And I'm a religious guy, and God gave me the gift of being able to build relationships with people. Am I the leader here because I'm like the best instructional dude, or I have all the schooly answers? I don't think so. But I can build relationships with people, and I care about people. So if there's somebody who's struggling from a mental health perspective, and it's hard, if you've got like your high school friends that are struggling and they can go home, or, there's even times that, we'll call parents here like, hey, this is going on. And they'll be like, well, that's dumb. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. Like, this, and this could happen. And then you're going to be like, hey, I shouldn't have looked at it that way. So that's, if you have somebody that, there are resources all over. Like there are hotlines. I would say talk to your counselors here. Talk to, if you're at college, you have those resources. As an adult, there are all kinds of resources, hotlines. And I would find something that works for you. Like, and people can think whatever they want to, but, like meditation or running, whatever gets you through. Because you'll still have, whatever people are going through, it doesn't really matter what it is. But I would say whatever people have to do, one, if you see somebody who's struggling, you think they're struggling, just ask them what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if somebody, tries to bite your head off, you can't take that personally. But I would say 9 times out of 10, if you ask somebody, hey, how you doing? You seem off. Or, hey, what's going on with you? They're probably just waiting for somebody to ask them that question.
Right.
And you being afraid to, could you get there's nothing wrong with me, go away, leave me alone. You could. But then maybe they come up to you later and like, I'm not okay. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the biggest step is, once you build relationships with people, you can tell. And some people, they don't want to talk about things. Some people are like, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to tell somebody my life story. I think that's a fear of being judged, or a fear of they're going to think this about me or think that about me. And you got to leave all that at the door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I could, I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like me or, okay.
Right.
Not to say that it doesn't bother me sometimes, because I don't want people to dislike me, but at the same time, if you carry all that, if you are constantly trying to make your decisions based off of somebody else, and that's something I still struggle with as a person sometimes. But for me, it was somebody saying, "You're not yourself. You're not whatever. I encourage you to go seek this because I've been there, and I knew I needed to." And then, like I said, the girl I was dating at the time, she kind of same thing. Like, you should go seek. And I didn't do it right away. I mean, it probably took a month, and then I finally did it, and then it's just like I said, maintenance in the gym and a car, maintenance, whatever, just that upkeep where you just got to keep yourself in check.
You said something about religion, how you're a religious guy.
Yeah.
Were you religious before your grandpa passed?
I would say that's a whole nother story entirely. I'll honestly say not really.
Was he?
He was.
Okay.
He was.
Did that drive you to become later?
Honestly, no. I would say for me, I had some weird experiences after he passed away that people were like, this dude's a psycho. For 6 months after he passed, we don't know what time he passed away.
Yeah.
Almost every day for 6 months, I woke up. It was between 2:30 and 2:35 every day. And I'm like, why do I keep waking up at the same time? Or just weird different stuff, started happening that I couldn't explain. And maybe it was all in my head, but for me, I mean, I did put a lot of blame on at that point that I'm sure everybody does. Like, if God was real, he wouldn't let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
If God was real, this wouldn't happen. Well, fellas, you find me a line in the Bible where it says that life's easy. You're not going to find it.
No.
You're not going to find it. So, if people want to blame God or blame whatever, it's just a scapegoat for, just like when parents or people, yell at, my kid's not getting playing time, I want to go yell at the coach, or my kid failed this test, I'm going to go yell at the teacher. Stuff like that. They're just putting blame on somebody else. And people do that a lot. This has happened in my life, that's happened, it's all God's fault. If God was real, then and I, people can have their perspective, but for me afterwards, I just kind of took it as I'm healthy when I maintain my religious side of myself too. So I have, Mrs. Gardner, our cricket, she got me I've got a little devotional that she gave me on my, she's great, and kind of share that, we can talk about that stuff.
That's cool.
She and I have those relationships with other people too, but, when I maintain my, when I lived in Indy, I had a church, I still stream it now, but I was involved in, volunteered in the kids ministry there. But after Papaw died, it was kind of, I did go through this, that ain't real.
Yeah.
And I started having these strange experiences. And then at least for me, I just had this, interpersonal conversation of, okay, if I believe in this thing and he's not real, or it's not, it's not real, what have I lost? Nothing. If I don't believe and it is real, I've lost everything.
Yeah.
So losing Papaw to me, also turned me towards the religious side of things, because I was like, if there's any chance I'm going to see this dude again, if that's what I got to do, and even if, people can have all their beliefs, but if I try to live my life a certain kind of way based off this, and not based off the legalism or the morality side of it, of it's a book of do this or
Right.
That's not my jam. Mm-hmm. But it's if I said, if I don't do this and there's life after this and he's there and I've made the choice to not participate, and that's life after this, and I'm well, that was dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More of a downside.
More of a downside, and that's always my argument to people. I'm like, okay, so you can be a part of a community, you can have, you can live your life, you can normally positive people,
Yeah.
but you run into bad people everywhere. It doesn't matter, school, church, doesn't matter.
Yep.
You can walk into Thornton's and somebody can yell at you. It doesn't matter. But that's where for me, it was, then people argue like, hey, suicide is a sin. So's cussing,
Yep.
so's greed,
So many things.
so's gluttony, so's. You're not going to compare that to, like in the Bible. I'm not saying that they're all, but biblically speaking, like, I don't judge other people.
They're kind of all on the same level.
They're, religiously speaking, they're all on the same level. Not to say that, some people have that argument with me of, well, this is that. Like, okay, it's again your opinion, your perspective on things, but I took it as it drove me to my faith because, and I still have to work on that every day. By no means am I, like there's stuff that I do. I'm like, dude, that was dumb.
All of us for sure.
But yeah, I've got a few years on you guys, and but just that because when I'm healthy in that aspect too, so that's another part of it for me is not only the mental health side of it, but then for me my faith side of it. I've not shied away from it from anybody in this community or school or anything. Like I have people ask me, I answer the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I maintain that side of me too, it kind of dwells out the negative. I was at Franklin, like I told y'all, played baseball there, and there's a baseball player, his name is Dave Dravecki. You guys can Google him. He pitched for the San Francisco Giants. I actually just made that connection. Giants, that's all right. Mind blown. Holy cow. Anyway, so the dude got cancer in his arm, his left arm, his pitching arm. Ended up they cut off part of his muscle. He went back pitching. And also, ironically enough, he pitched against the Reds when his arm snapped. So that's
Another.
all right. Look at this.
Crazy.
So, and you guys can Google it. So he's pitching, his arm snaps, ends up having to get amputated. And at this point, this was when I was in college before anything with Papaw had happened. Still dealing with some stuff, and I told the dude, I was like, "Hey, Mr. Dravecki, my best friend and I at the time, he was All-American stud. I was the dude that just kept the bench warm, whatever." And we're walking Mr. Dravecki back to the house he was staying in, and I was like, "Hey, man, I've got a turbulent relationship with God." And he started laughing at me hysterically, and I was like, "That really ticks me off. Why are you laughing at me, man?" And he's like, "It's not." He's like, "God doesn't have a turbulent relationship with you. You have this relationship with Him." I was like, "Okay." And he refined it. Or the thing that he coined it to me was the process of getting gold. You guys know how that works? How you make or how you get pure gold?
I don't.
Okay, so here we go, kids. So the way they'll take gold, if we're talking what's the show on Discovery Channel? I love that show. Gold Rush. Maybe.
Yeah.
Love
Something
that
like
show.
that. I've seen it.
So anyway, they melt it all down, and then the impurities are black, and they get rid of the it melts off the carbon and all of those things, and then you're left with the pure gold. So he's like, the refiner's fire in the Bible is, he's like, so you have to think of every time something bad happens to you, it's God trying to teach you, hey, don't do that. So, people can say, they can take whatever experience that they've gone through. Somebody cussed me out, so now I'm going to go do that to somebody else. Or adult world, you can think of all the different bad things, bad choices that people can make, and they choose to repeat them rather than making the choice of, okay, this happened, what can I learn from it? Let's not do that again. So, if I can take that experience of, Papaw, for example, and I can share that, and it prevents somebody from making that choice. But the way that he expressed it to me that night was, he's like, every time something bad happens to you, you have to consider it as you're being refined. That, okay, this happened, I learned from it, I got to not repeat that. And like I said, if that's, and I'm the best version of myself when I'm healthy and involved in that, and also maintaining my mental health. I'm the Dwayne The Rock Johnson version of myself when I'm also working out. So I got to get back into doing that. I said that, I don't know, I chased a kid today, and afterwards I was like, dude, I got to start running again. Something. Holy cow. I don't know. This is a big building. Try to scramble around. You're out of shape. Anyway.
Fair.
But, like the religious side of me of, I pray about stuff and ultimately trying to realize, like, the more that I realize I'm not in control, better off I am.
Yep.
But especially here at school, like, with being the leader or whatever, where I'm expected to be in control of everything. And then, like, sometimes I go into that office, I'm like, little do these people know, like, I'm not in control of squat.
Yeah.
Like, I can help make decisions, but ultimately my belief is, like, like, I try to make my family proud. And if I make a decision that, I'm way harder on myself than anybody else in the world's ever going to be.
Yeah.
Like, especially from, like, an athlete perspective. Like, if I went up and my first at bat or, like, my first shot, if I didn't sink it, or, like, if I didn't get a hit my first AB, I might as well just go park it, because I was just a mental head case where I'm like, all right, not shooting anymore. All right, popped out first time. It's going to be not good.
Yeah.
But from, the religious, and there, and that's the one thing. I think you can throw a rock and hit a church down here, which is this community, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That the community is that,
Love that.
and, like, yeah, love that. And, we've got, like, Mrs. Bigelow here, like Davey B, he's on your,
Yes,
He is.
Yes.
David, he's awesome. David Bigelow, or I've got like Mr. Connect, or I've got, let's say there's Mr. Ramsey who reached out to me, Pastor Jenkins. Like, I've had all these different religious leaders in the community that have reached out to me. Like, Pastor Jenkins texted me this morning, like, hey, you're heavy on my heart for some reason. Sent me a prayer that he had for me. He's like, blessings, brother. And I was like, hey,
That's awesome.
I mean, how many people, how many communities, where you come to, and that's kind of the reception or the relationships that you get.
Yeah.
And it's also cool that, if I share my religious beliefs and that gets me in trouble in any kind of way, then I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Right.
I really don't. And I mean, I think that's, through the grief and stuff like that, I say it also maybe makes you, like, just real humble in a truer version of, I don't hide things. If I'm having a bad day, I'll be like, today ain't the day.
Yeah.
And you're like, or people be like, you just wear it on your face. I'm like, yep. I'm not going to hide it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing is some people try to hide behind stuff or their feelings or their emotions from the grief standpoint. But for me, either my faith or just like me maintaining my mental health. And there's still stuff that'll set me off, and, like, I'll fall into this spiral of feeling insecure about things, or like, hey, everybody else has left me, you're going to leave me too. Like, why aren't you texting me back right now? Why aren't you? And why aren't you this? What did I do? Please don't leave.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, I still struggle with all the time. Like, me personally, I just assume everybody that comes into my life that I get close to, I just automatically assume, hey, they're going to leave. So I'd say that's a part of suicide. I think I'll always have a hard time trying to connect with people, at least on a deep level.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can have deep conversations with people, but actually building, like, a deep relationship with people, really hard for me to do. And, like, when I open myself up to people and allow that to happen, like, if they take advantage of that or they don't reciprocate it, like, it's real crushing for me personally.
Yeah.
So that's why, I've got maybe, Ian, I have a best friend named Ian in Nashville. What's that ball game? Witten, New York City. My brother Seth. Mom Nanny. And, like I said, a better relationship with my dad. So, and I've got a circle of, And I have other people of, like relationships. Like if I'm dating someone, I hope that it gets to that point. Like I'd like to get married and have
Yeah.
kids. It takes a lot for me to be vulnerable and try to get there. The Bible also says, guard your heart, protect your heart more than anything.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's also in there. Like, hey, you above all else, you got to guard your heart. So I think that's, if people, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen me walking down the halls. People are like, dude, your face. And I'm like, I don't know. I was born with it. I can't help it.
Actually, I remember.
Yep, here we go.
So, I think it was maybe the third day of school. I think you came down this way.
Yeah.
And you were talking to some teachers, and they were like, "You always seem mad." And I was just walking past, and I just heard that, and I looked back, and I was like, "Yeah, he does seem like an angry guy," you know.
It's just my face. It's just my face.
But so far you've been amazing. So
Thanks, man.
we appreciate
No,
it.
I mean, I just appreciate you guys having me. And like I said, if I can share a story and it can give somebody else some help, or, but
I do have one more question. I mean, I am jumping back a little bit,
hey,
but
do it, my man.
when we were talking about our last podcast, I asked my buddy about dreams and if he dreamed about her and his outlook on it.
Yep.
And he had like a really positive outlook about how it meant a lot to him and enjoyed him. Like it was like a little message.
Sure.
When you dreamed about him, did he bring anger in you, or was it like he's coming to see me?
I had different experiences where I just felt like he was coming to see me. Like he's just telling me he's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and those are my experiences. I don't really care what anybody else thinks of what they are. But just had several the experiences that I've shared with only a handful of people. They'd be like, yeah, you're crazy. And I'm like, okay. But for me, anytime that I have those experiences, or, there's just times that I could hear him. He just had little sayings that he had, or like I can hear those pop into my head sometimes. Or just ways he would do things. So anytime that I have a situation where, okay, so we'll say like I took this job, didn't know, like, was this good, is this bad, didn't really know. Like one of my life goals is to write a book, and I had it all planned out, some notebook paper. I've moved 2 different apartments in Indianapolis, moved from Indianapolis down here, thought I lost it. I haven't seen this paper, like I haven't seen this thing for like 2 years. And there's this folder that I keep important documents in. It was like when you have a family member, military, and they die, you get a letter from the governor. So it was from Mike Pence was like that, but I put that in a frame, so I just had this folder, and nothing was in that folder. Nothing. I've looked in it multiple, like nothing's in it. I get this job. Quite frankly, I'm freaking out about it because I'm like, Mrs. Gardner and Mr. Budd are like, hey, you want this job? Yes. Hang up the phone. Now what? And it's like a couple days before, school's supposed to start, and I'm just freaking out. And I've looked in that folder. I'm positive. And a couple days before this job starts, for whatever reason, I'm moving stuff around, got that folder, paper falls out. I haven't seen it for years. And it's got everything on there. And I just start crying like a baby. And I'm like, could it have been in there? Absolutely. But for me, I hadn't seen it. I know I've looked in that folder before. Maybe somebody put it in there. But just like, and I'll take those types of things. And I'm like, this is him telling me it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody else put it in there. But the fact is, like, something I was looking for, it was in this folder that was his document, his folder. I haven't seen this thing in years. I've been trying to find it.
Yeah.
Because I have all these ideas written down, and that falls out of the folder, and I'm just like, you're telling me it's, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of the stuff of, and I want to remember him as the best version of himself, the best things that he gave to me. Like, if I have a little nephew, little baby Jack, he's got Papaw's middle name. Like, if I have a son, I don't think I can name a daughter James, but
Jamie.
Jamie. You know, just stuff like that, where I'll try to honor him, or, you know. So, and optimism it's hard to be optimistic when you go through things. You just kind of always expect the negative. You're always going to be hurt. You're always going to be this. So at least when I think of him, for me, it can be an emotional experience, but I don't want to say that it's a bad one.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I have dreams and he's involved, or experiences where he's involved, if I am moved to emotion, it's out of missing him more than anything. So I know some people get mad, but I just take it as, you know, he's still saying hi. He's still saying, and that's just how I look at it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on,
Hey,
talking
thanks,
to
fellas.
us, and I mean, we're sure it wasn't easy to talk about these things, especially some young guys like us. So,
Hey, no big deal, guys.
so
Just
we appreciate
it.
you coming on.
Really
and,
appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you have a friend that's dealing with grief or depression or really anything, let them know that you're there for them. I think that's important, that we let each other know that we're in this together. And we're thankful that Mr. P came on and talked to us. His story was incredible, and it was definitely something that a lot of people can learn from, I think. So we're thankful that you came on. But other than that, we'll see you guys in the next one. That's all
All
for
right,
now.
see ya.
All right,
Love
see
you
ya.
guys.
Love you.
Love you.